Hello everyone. Focal points are the star of the show. The focal point is what you want your viewer to see. This practice is all about making a focal point stand out. It will also give you an idea of what to look out for when you're searching for collage fodder. So what is a focal point? A focal point is the first thing that you see. It is something that draws your eye. What makes a focal point is something interesting. A face, a figure, a cute dog, something unusual, a great pattern, a great color, something like that. It's the first thing that catches your eye. So there's a couple of things that will make a focal point stand out. Let's talk about a couple of them. I want to talk about size and contrast. I'm going to scooch these over and get some potential backgrounds. This exercise we're doing 4-inch squares. So you want something that will fill that square. You want something that's going to be noticeable. Maybe not something so tiny that you are searching for something to see. Now, the only reason this little coffee cup stands out is because it's the only thing you can see on the square. It's a white square, so anything would show up. So you don't want your viewer to search for your focal point, okay? So maybe you want something a little bit larger than that. So let's talk about contrast. You want something that will stand out from the background. If you have something light, it may not be very noticeable. You might have to work on trying to find a background that will actually, so you can actually see your focal point. So it does matter about light and dark. You want a light focal point to be on a dark background so you can see it. You don't want a light focal point to be on a light background. It'll blend in. It won't be very noticeable. It stops being a focal point. This one's kind of iffy. All right, so let's talk about other kinds of backgrounds. I like text. Text is the genes of collage. Everything goes with it. Just about. I mean, just about. It's really hard to go wrong with text, but it can get kind of boring. You know, sometimes you want something a little bit more interesting. And when you're looking for focal points, you don't necessarily need a full image. On a 4-inch square, this fish is the focal point. It doesn't need to be the whole fish. It's still really cool. So just keep that in mind when you're looking for collage fodder. It doesn't need to be a full item, whatever it is. I love patterns for stuff. When you're doing abstract kind of collage, you want your abstract images to contrast your background. You want the interesting focal point to stand out. So something like that would work. Start getting into busy, let me get these out here. Start getting into busy backgrounds. The contrast sometimes is hard. the contrast here works because it's circles and lines. But if we were to put something like this on that, I mean, it still kind of works because it's so bold. But something like that kind of gets lost. Here's another busy background. It's all right. It would work for certain things, but it kind of works with that because your eye's not searching for the focal point. This one's contrasting not very much, so your eye is kind of searching a little bit. Your eye isn't drawn directly to the focal point. So you want to kind of stay away from busy backgrounds at first anyway. They're really distracting to your eye. This one works because it contrasts, the color contrasts so well. So things like this can work, but you need to practice to find what you like to look at. So color is a great contrast. Maybe not something like that, but black and white on color. That makes that focal point pop. Maybe something like this might be too busy unless you have a good contrasting color. Black and white, it's interesting. It depends on what you like to look at. This exercise is all about taking a look at different types of focal points and seeing what you like. Here's a light polka dot, and just about everything works on this. Little tiny things, abstract. You're always drawn to your focal point with something like this. This is an easy background. This one, same thing. When you get something that's high contrast, it starts to get a little more difficult. You're making it hard on yourself if you're trying to use something like this. It works for some things, but not a lot of things. Later on, you'll be able to use things like this. Contrasting size, contrasting with color. This practice will help you see that kind of thing. So here's a really dark background, and it may work for some things, but it won't work for everything. There's hardly any contrast to that. But it certainly makes you look at something like that. So something with a color, the color contrasts. So the purpose of this, here's another busy one, practice is to gather some potential focal points. And they can be anything. You can see anything that you're interested in. Some dark ones, some light ones, and get some backgrounds. Here's some painted paper. Get some backgrounds and start putting things together. This will help you discover your style. What kinds of things do you like? Do you like painted paper in the background? Do you like patterns? Do you like just color? What works for your eye? There is no wrong answer to this. Everyone's style is different. Everybody's likes and dislikes is different. Somebody might like something with a plain background, and somebody might want something completely different. So this is an exercise on discovering things that you might like. Opening your eyes to what works as a focal point for you and what doesn't. I'm not a big floral person, so I probably wouldn't choose something like that. This might be too small. It might be too close in color. Maybe you'd rather have something opposite the color wheel, but you kind of lose her head, her face, her hair. You really get lost in that. So this is a big practice. The more you do this, the more you're going to discover what you like, what you don't like, what works for you, what works with the items that you have. Maybe you have some magazine images that you want to use as a background. Here's just an abstract, some brushes. That would work. You don't have to use magazines, though. I mean, like I said, you can use patterned paper or scrapbook paper or anything. But it is helpful to try some magazine images just to see what works. Sometimes magazine images on magazine images, they kind of blend together, the color and such. So it is a practice on contrast, maybe a different color, different pattern. See what works for you. Busy backgrounds are not always the best. They distract from your focal point. You want your viewer to see what you want them to see. You're directing them. And if there's a lot going on, they might get confused and not be able to figure out what you wanted them to see. We can put the fish here in the sand. That's interesting. Here's another busy one. You might not be able to see a whole lot. So backgrounds matter. You want to be able to see your focal point, whatever it is. Some things will work on something like this, and some things won't. This one's a tough one. Not a whole lot will work with that. So This is also a very busy one, but something like that. Just about anything will work. All right, so this exercise is all about finding some focal points and finding some backgrounds that those will stand out. All right. For beginners, find some potential focal points. Okay. Gather different backgrounds and start matching them up. And then when you find something that you really like, let's see, what do I really like? We're going to find a detail to put it together with that won't distract from your focal point. Maybe a hat, or maybe a bird, maybe a piece of something in the background. Here's a ship. So if you're just beginning, I want you to find some potential backgrounds and some potential focal points. Start putting them together. This is going to train your eye to see what works for you and what doesn't. So this is a great contrasting. That focal point, you can really see it on that square. But when you put something like that as a detail, she is so bold, even though she's small, she's so bold that she draws your eye. She distracts from your focal point. She is not a good detail for this collage. Maybe if she was on top like that, then she would be adding to this focal point, making a single focal point. So that would work. So this is all about figuring out things that work together and things that don't. All right? And red, I don't care about anything other color, but red is powerful. Red will draw your eye no matter what. If it's a tiny little bit of red on a crazy background, it's going to draw your eye. It comes down to, especially for women, you see red, someone's hurt. You're trained, it's instinct. You know, if you see red, you pay attention. Red is a focal point, no matter how big. So if you're having trouble finding a focal point, red is a great place to start. All right? And you don't want red as a little detail because that will draw the attention to that. You don't want your focal point to be competing for attention. You don't. So red is one of those that you need to practice. So that's it, okay, for beginners. Let me get some of these other focal points out here so we can play around with them. Maybe you're going to do something with the face. For beginners, I want you to find some focal points, gather some backgrounds, start matching them up, and then find one detail to go with. Maybe it's another face on top. Maybe it's, here's my little details. Let's see. What have I got here? This is why I like, here's another eye. This is why I like to put my things together and not sort them out into categories, because, you know, I never know what I'm looking for. Something will just appear for, you know, that I'll never think about putting them together. You know, let me go and find a face and a chair and put those together in a collage. That it doesn't work for me. I have a bunch of different things together, and then I like, what are my options? What could I put together? Word. A word is another thing that really draws your eye. A word would be a focal point. You are really inclined to read a word before you look at any images. So keep that in mind as well. A word will be a focal point no matter how big or small. You see a word, you want to read it. That's all there is to it. And maybe we can put the scuba diver with the fish. So I like to put all my little, especially my details, my little bits, I like to put them all together so that when I am searching for something, it doesn't have to be a focal point. I have options. Here's a regular person's eye. That's a detail. Doesn't distract from the full focal point. So I like to do this because I don't plan. Like, what could go together? What would be interesting? Here's a crown. Try different things out. Try something else. Let's work with this. If I put that detail there, she draws attention. She's just too bold. Maybe if I put a tree, it's small enough. It's not really, it might be too dark. Maybe if I put a little pattern over the top. Maybe some painted paper. Maybe a ship. This is the fun part for me. Looking at all the possibilities. What can I put together? Something large, something small. Make something fun. This, I can spend hours playing around with different things. So a detail for that might be a mermaid coming out of the cup, or a dolphin jumping out of the cup, or a scuba diver. What else? I could put the owl on the rim here. Maybe that's not bright enough. Maybe you want something else. Here's a little pig. And I find all these little tiny details like this in advertisements. I go to the back of magazines and such. There are logos for companies and stuff like that. So let's use her. She's cool. What can we put with her? What kind of detail? We put a tree. We put that coffee cup, that tiny little coffee cup that's She's looking down at something. Maybe this little tiny rocking chair. Maybe you want to put an owl on her shoulder. So for beginners, those that haven't done a lot of this kind of thing and need to practice, just find a large focal point or more, get some backgrounds, start matching them up, and when you find something, find a detail to go with it to make it really interesting. Okay? For those who need more of a challenge, the practice is to find some focal points and some backgrounds, start matching them up, but your challenge is to find 3 details to put with that focal point. I had a gondola somewhere. Where did that gondola go? It's gone. It's gone. Who knows? I was going to use it for this. You want to find a focal point, a background, and 3 details. Details that won't pull focus from your focal point. It's a bit of a challenge. You want things that will go with, complement. So the challenge is to find 3 little somethings that will go with your focal point on your background. Make sure your focal point can be seen on the background, and your 3 details don't pull the focus. If I were to put something with a lot of color, that immediately pulls focus. So that won't work. So that's the challenge. Find 3 things to go with that focal point. So they're not competing. Where did that gondola go? Okay. There's a lot of stuff here to practice and to think about. You want your focal point to catch your eye immediately. You want your focal point to be the center of attention. That owl was pretty cool. You want your focal point to be interesting, something different. Size matters, and you want it to contrast enough so that you can see it on your background. Let's see, one more. Here, let's put the butterfly up here and the ship down here. Owl on her shoulder. Okay, so practice this one. This one is the big one. You want your focal points to be the center of attention. It does take practice. This will really show you what you like, what you are interested in. You'll find that certain things draw your eye more than others. I always go for eyes, houses, eggs, and I don't know why. I'm not a big egg fan, but I see eggs everywhere. It's just one of those things that catches my eye. So those things are part of your style. Let yourself collect whatever catches your eye. Practice this one a lot. This is the main thing. Put the owl down there. Mess around with this, play around with this. When you find something you really like, you can put it together. Glue it together and number it, number 3, focal points. Good luck, everyone. Go out and search for some really interesting focal points. Play around with everything. You don't have to glue all of them together. Save some of them for later because we're going to be doing a whole lot with focal points. Thanks, everyone.